of visual artists and art lovers, where as art lovers, you can connect with artists from around the world and learn from them directly. So in today's session, Maarten, as you already see, is joining actually from Amsterdam, and he's a very highly professional and educational artist who has been practicing for more than 30 years, and he teaches at Walker's Academy in Amsterdam, and also conducts a lot of exhibitions in Netherlands and in Czech Republic. So Maarten will tell you more about himself and his practice. Yes, Maarten.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, well, I'm more than 40 years artist, and I do a lot of techniques. Mainly in my studio, I do oil painting. I don't like to do that so much outside because it's too much of a trouble to take all your stuff with you. So that I do with the watercolor or color pencils. I'm a classical artist. That means that I paint specially portraits, also in commission. I make still life. You can see a couple of them at the back of me. Also what I call nocturnes, that are night scenes. If you look at my website, you can find them all. Perhaps you did, then you have an idea what I'm doing. And I make nudes, I make allegorical subjects, mainly the stories of Ovid, the Metamorphoses. I use that, and in that I paint nudes together with, well, what is the story about? So that is what I do, and at the same time I teach on the Walker's Academy. That is correct, that's what Prerna said. And that's a private academy, and that's a classical academy. I teach there already for about 30 years, which is a very long time. Online is now coming also, although, as you have noticed, I'm not completely skilled in that art, but that will come later with some help of somebody who is also very good in that. So that is what I do, and I have a lot of exhibitions, not only in Czech Republic, but I also had that in Turkey. I went several times to Turkey to paint, especially Cappadocia. That's a very special landscape I like very much. In Great Britain, I have had exhibitions, and in Italy. But nowadays, because every summer period from May till September, I go to Czech Republic, and there I actually change my studio, as you can see around me, for the open air, which is very pleasant, I must say. It's also a challenge because it's a completely different dynamic. And for that, I take always my watercolor. It's very easy to take, it's very light. You have your watercolor pad, you have your box of colors, and then you have a few brushes. So you can easily travel through the countryside and look for nice spots, good compositions, light situations, and with that, I'm trying to not to be, let's say, preconceived in the subject, but I try to let it come to me in a light situation. I think, hey, that is good. So you have morning light, you have afternoon light, and then the colors also change. You have the springtime, as you know, that gives a lot of different colors if you compare it with the early autumn time. And for that, I also use different colors. And that is actually the challenge of going outside. Also, the elements, you never know when it starts to rain, although Czech Republic is a country which I love because it is a land climate, which means you don't have to be afraid that suddenly, like in Holland, you will be completely wet in also your watercolor pad. So that is, I also like very much hills and rock formations, which you can also find there very much. And also in Turkey, the Cappadocia area. that is very special, very capricious in the shape. It's very nice to work. I like that very much. So I do outside watercolor, which we are talking today, and I also use my color pencils. Also very light material, and I can use it every time when I see something. I can sit down, I take my paper, and I can start, and that's what I like. Good. I will show you a couple of my paintings I did recently in Czech Republic. And I also will show you different kinds of technique and papers. Here you see, if you can see it clearly, that those are beehives, as you can see. And the composition was very nice because there was a kind of caravan standing there with the boxes next to it and a beautiful surrounding of trees. I will show you so that you can zoom in and you see the dabs of water paint. And that is especially what it is all about, that you try to suggest leaves on the tree by just using your brush in a very light manner. So it's different from drawing, it's different from painting. I never call it painting. The thing is that you let your brush do the work. That means that you should not push or you should not be tense about the shape. Let it flow out of the movement of your arm and wrist, which is very important. This is what you can say the smooth watercolor paper. And if you look carefully to the paint, how the water is absorbed in the paper, and you compare that with another kind of paper, you can see here, this is a kind of ruina. And if you zoom in, you can see it's much more rough. I'm crazy about ruins, and that is also why I love Czech Republic so much, because they keep their ruins so nicely. In Holland, everything which is older than 50 years should be torn down and is away. And I like that kind of thing, that it is still there, and it makes also, it gives a kind of magical atmosphere. And also for a painter, there's a lot to enjoy in light and shade, because everything in art, as you know, probably has to do with light and shade. Of course, color is also an important thing, but when you start to look to things, you always have to think, where comes the sun from, which side, so that you know where the shade will be. And then you get what I call a relief or a relief in the landscape. And that is something which changes very quickly. But we will talk about that later. And not only nature I do, it's also a typical, what I say, communistic houses in Czech Republic. This Plattenbau. And this is also done from a window. I only work plein air, so not from a photo. I always work from the real spot. And as you can see also, this little structural thing, that's done by the paper. This is mulberry paper, which is rough. It's not really made for watercolor, but that gives you something exciting while you work. While real watercolor paper is 100% cotton. And it's completely made for the watercolorist to make his effects of water, the absorption of water, and that you get certain spots of colored water on your paper. Sometimes it's very nice, but I always think it is, in that way, the watercolors all look similar. So that's why I try out in different kind of papers to make it more, exciting for myself and see what happens. Look, I also do, this is a rock painting with trees on top, and this is only with 2 colors, as you can see. I will turn the light so that's better if you look at like this. So this is what I call the relief of the landscape. You see the darker spots, you see the light spots. I use a kind of blue-gray that's called Payne's gray, and I use a burnt or raw umber for the warm part. So you have cool and warm parts in a landscape, actually in everything. And so the thing is with watercolor that you work with tonal values. That means that it has a certain gray value from light to dark. So you work immediately with tone and with color at the same time. And that is the enjoyment of doing that, especially outside. Let's have a look. This is done on this very special watercolor paper. Also a ruin of a house. And here I actually don't use watercolor, but colored ink. And that works like watercolor. It's only not reversible. So if you do something, you can't take it away. With watercolor, it is sometimes simple if you work and the shape is not right or the perspective is not right. You can, with clean water, rub it away and you can start anew. You can do that 1-2 times. Otherwise, if you do it too much, your paper will be damaged and then the water will not absorb nicely into the paper. So you have to be careful, only do it when it's really necessary. Now this is again mulberry paper. It's a typical agrarian painting. And that is early in the summer, actually late spring. You see the grain on the field is still in a light color and it slowly becomes more and more yellow, as you know. So in these different seasons, you get different colors, and that's what I like very much to see and to do something with it. Here you see a late summer painting. It's framed because I'm just before a exhibition with my watercolors, recent watercolors. So I hope you can see it because it's glass. But here you see that it's more brownish. You see the straw in little hives, you can say, on the field, which is very typical in the agrarian landscape of Europe, that they are putting it on the field and you get a beautiful perspective. And that's what I like very much. It is Libeszowice, that's a small village. I love that place very much. And it's the station, what you see in the distance, with the field in front. So I immediately thought this is what I should do. So then I take out my stool, I sit down, because it's always important if you can see your subject well from a low position, or you have to stand behind your easel. That is what you always have to find out when you are working. Well, I told you rock painting is very much my thing. And here you see, that's I made this summer. That is, I will try to, yeah, here you have it completely. These are these typical rocks you find in North Bohemia in the north of Czech Republic. And that is like, they are like mushrooms. It is very special in the shape. It is, of course, in between the forest. So you have to find a good spot to see the rocks well, and not only tree trunks, because that is sometimes very difficult. Well, if I put it a little bit nearer, then you see how I painted this. If you can have this is better, huh, I think. And this is done in the afternoon. And with these rocks, and anyhow in the landscape, the color changes with the light, with the sun. I mean, in the morning you have much more atmosphere, things get cooler, and the colors are not really coming out. But the moment it comes into the afternoon, then you see many more colors coming, especially on rocks. It can be almost kaleidoscopic if you have the feeling for it. So I like that very much. What you can do is early in the morning you start with the shape, it's clear, and then of course the sun is going from one side to the other. So what you have to do when you are in the landscape, that you start somewhere, and then the relief of the landscape is an important thing. Just how is light and shade, where are the casting shades, that you have to try to put on your paper as fast as possible, because within an hour the sun is on another place and your shades will disappear. So that is actually what I always do. I start with that part, and then later during daytime into the afternoon, then the colors, because of the sun and the color of the sun, the colors of the landscape will become deeper, warmer, and more kaleidoscopic. And the beauty is that if you look to nature, you think, oh, it's all green. But like the famous painter Claude Monet, the Impressionist, said that in nature, everything is violet. That was a famous saying of him. And that means that in the shade, because of the influence of the warm green, the shades become violet to purple. And that is becoming more and more in the afternoon. So in the afternoon, you have actually the most colors coming together with what is officially called the simultaneous contrast. That means that when the eye sees yellow-green, it tries to compensate by, in the shade, to see purple, reddish. These are the complementaries. But yeah, that is a bit scientific, but that is what is happening in your eye. And that comes more and more in the afternoon because the sun gets stronger and warmer. I will show you some more things. Here I had a special rocks again, also on smooth watercolor paper. These are the typical rocks you find everywhere. High standing white limestone rocks. And it's a kind of hard and soft stone. And that gives the special shapes, as you can see. And if I go nearer, then you can also see how it is painted. And the nice thing of rocks is, if you do a building, of course, you have to do with the proportions and the perspective, and you have to do a lot of line works. But with a rock, you can play. You can just play like a tree. You can play if you understand the structure of things by, of course, experience, by doing a lot. Then it doesn't matter if the movement goes slightly different from what it is, because you are not bound to a perspective or whatever. And rocks has the same thing. It has, of course, a beautiful relief of light and dark, and all these cracks which are in the rocks gives you a possibility to play with the point of your brush. And that is for watercolor what I really am looking towards. About the building, I have here a watercolor on mulberry paper. Now, that's also a ruin of an old station. They took it down now, so it's gone, which I'm very sad about that. People have no poetry, I always say, because they want to get rid of it. But look how beautiful such a ruined building can be. And for a painter, it's a joy, because there is so much light and shade and color. You see the bricks coming through the upper part of the wall, and yeah, that's almost like a tree, you can say, and that I enjoy that very much. Also, the ancientness of a building is, I think it's poetry, and that's why I like to do it. On my journey in India, now a couple of years ago, and I met there also Prerna. You see, this is the Ganges near Rishikesh. I'm not sure if you ever been there. So you can see the colors better. Beautiful place. I sat there near the river and made this. This is a sketchbook. Sometimes I do these things in sketchbook. It's also mulberry paper. This is quite rough paper. You can see the edges. That's rough. It's not cut, but it's still as it is made. So in that way, I sometimes open the book completely, and because the Ganges is very wide, I wanted to have a complete horizontal painting. It's only what I just said in the beginning, not easy to paint in India, because or you are surrounded by hundreds of Indian people, which I love, but at the same time you get a bit nervous. And if they are there, then also the gibbons are there, just the monkey. So you have to watch your watercolor pad because they like colors. Before you know, they take your watercolor pad off, they snatch the brushes out of your hand. So it's a bit of a nerve-breaking work to paint watercolor in India. Here's also Rishikesh. That is the famous bridge, if you can see, with mountains at the background, very hazy because it was, of course, very damp period. Very interesting to do, and I would like to do more of those paintings in India because it is such a special country. Here it was in a hotel in Vrindavan, this special what do you call kiosk buildings, people hanging beside of it. That was the Krishna hotel, you can say. Very beautiful because Vrindavan is of course very busy, but if you come into that area, it's completely quiet, which is very pleasant to paint these things. Good. Well, I showed you a couple of works, as I told you. En,
docent van mij heeft nu een live.
Sorry? Is somebody asking me something? Okay. We go over to a live session. I will show you two different types of watercolor painting on two different pieces of paper. So that is just to give you an example. Probably you have seen a small video of the session I did before it was probably August or July, I can't remember anymore. There I made a whole still life painting with watercolor, and you could follow how I build it up. Now I do it just simple to give you an example how you can work, how you have to use the brushes, and I will explain a little bit about the material. Good. What is very important, as you probably have noticed in my story about my own work, is the quality of the paper. Of course, you can make watercolors on every kind of paper you like, only it has everything to do with the absorption of the water. And the official watercolor paper, as you know, that's glued layer on layer. It has a great absorption possibility, especially when your paper is about 100 grams or 300 grams. Yeah, you have different on the pad, it says 100 grams, 200 grams, 300 grams. The best is 300 grams because there it can absorb more water. You can put more layers on top of each other without that it becomes blurred. Yeah, and that's 100% cotton. That's why it's so expensive if you buy it. And then you have all kind of quality difference, of course. The cheaper, the less absorption of water. But if you start watercoloring, well, then it doesn't really matter. Well, then you have the different grains, as they call it. You have the smooth, the satin-like, that is very smooth, used often by designers. You have the middle grain, that is where I work mostly on. That is a kind of roughness, but not too much. And then you have the very rough one, and that's more if you want to splash around with watercolor, because the roughness gives a certain, it will not be so detailed and fine, but it will be more depths of watercolor on your paper. So these are actually the 3 different papers. Then you have, of course, what I told you before, mulberry paper. That is from the skin of the tree, the bark of the tree, made from that. And that is what I showed you. This paper came from Thailand. Unfortunately, I can't buy it anymore because the small paper factory stopped altogether. It was a family company, and now I have to search for that paper somewhere else, but I couldn't find it yet. But that is made from this bark of the mulberry. And then you have all kinds of other papers you can use, and you always have to see if it will absorb enough. So that is important. Paper is one of the more important part of your whole technique. Second thing are your brushes. Nowadays you have different brushes because they make this artificial hair, filament it's called, and that's a kind of nylon, which if you buy it from a good label, this is Da Vinci for instance, which is a very good label, they manufacture it in such a way that it absorbs a lot of water in the brush itself. Yeah, because what is important of the brush, and I show you slightly another brush to make it more clear. This is squirrel hair. Probably you know that. It's also what Chinese and Japanese watercolorists and ink painters use. You have the belly of the brush, that is the thicker part, and you have the point of the brush. Yeah, they should always come together. And the cheaper your brush, the more problems you will get. The more expensive your brush, the better it will come every time back to this point, which is very important. Why is that important? Because you can start with a very, very fine point, and by pushing the hair, you can use the whole belly of the brush, and in that way, you can make a kind of a thicker part. It also sucks up a lot of water. That is this one especially. This natural hair has a capacity of absorbing a lot of water. And with the filament or the nylon, that's less absorption because, it has to do with how the hair is actually built. We don't go too much into that because that becomes too detailed. So I have the squirrel brush here, and I have the nylon brush. Then we have the famous Kolinsky sable hair. Those are very expensive. This is made from the tail of the sable. And then you have all kinds of quality difference. You have red sable, that means it's just not, it is a good sable, but it's not the best. And the best is called Kolinsky. Yeah. Kolinsky is a name of a village, I think in Poland or in Ukraine, that I don't know. And that is where they hand make these brushes. So they put the hairs together. They take the points, and the hair of a sable is very flexible. It's not too soft so that it will go one side like the squirrel, but it always comes back to the middle. And that's a very important thing if you do that kind of Western watercolor painting. What is also important with good brushes is that you see amount of hair on top of your tube, the metal tube, and a good brush has actually the same amount of hair in the tube. And that's very important because that is your reservoir. Yeah, if you buy the cheap brushes, it will be like this. So that means it has not a great capacity of a reservoir. And if you want to do watercolor, you want that you can continue for a while with a dab of water, so that you don't have to every time push in your color to get new paint, like you do, for instance, with oil paint. With watercolor, that it will flow for some time, and that's why it's important that you have enough reservoir in your brush. Now, you can have different, of course, you have different numbers. I use mostly, no, the number is not there, but mostly I use an 8 till 12. And then you have enough belly and you have always a good point. Only when I use for, let's say, the sky with clouds, then I have these two brushes, which are very big. This is the squirrel and this is the nylon hair. And it sucks up a lot of water because the sky on your painting is quite a bit of surface what you have to cover. And I like these brushes because it gives a kind of structure in your paint so that you can suggest the clouds instead of painting them by following the outlines of clouds or whatever. So I take the thicker brushes, especially when I do the sky. Okay, this is about the brushes. Important thing together with the paper. And I have a lot of brushes, but you can also, 3 would be enough. A fine one, a middle one, and a bigger one. It should work because you can always take out the color in your pot of water, which you always have to take with you, or you have in your studio. And then you can use the brush again for another color. Yeah, that's the difference with oil paint. Then you have to take every time a new brush or clean your brush thoroughly. If you used it with green and you want to use red, well, these are complementaries, and before you know, you get a kind of brownish color. So, and with watercolor, you just have to take it to clean it in the water, and you can use it again. Well, then you have of course, the color pad. It's quite a big one. Sometimes when I'm really traveling lightly, I have a small one, but mostly I use this because it's very handy. It has 2 palettes at both sides because, yeah, you need a lot of space to mix your color. Combinations, mixing, it's all very important. And sometimes, especially when you have an elaborate work to do, a big landscape with all kinds of colors, I use an extra plastic palette with me. Plastic is the best thing because it's light and it will not suck into wood or in paper. That is about the color. You have also a lot of price differences, of course. The top qualities, they are quite pricey, but that means that the pigment of the color is very strong. So they can test that. The cheaper you buy, the less durable your pigment is. And that's a very important thing. Watercolor is based on the pigment and the gum, you can say, Arabian gum or resin. And these two, if you combine that together, you get a soluble paint, which you can mix with water. And in that way, you can easily put your color, which is pigment, on your paper. And in the end, after a day especially, it is really sucked into the paper and you can't get it away easily. And that's, of course, important. Good. So with these materials, I start working. Most of the time, I start the drawing, especially when it's a complicated landscapes. When you make a building, for instance, so you have to find out the perspective, but also a complicated landscape with rocks. It's better just to do an outline of the shapes you see before you start with watercolor, especially if you want it more realistic. As I am a realistic painter, so I want to have it as I see it, and not some very much suggestion of it. Okay, these are the materials. Are there any questions about these? No questions. Okay, then I will proceed. And then I turn the laptop in such a way that you can see my work from the top. So you won't see my face.
Maarten, we could do one thing in the like before we start the demonstration, we can have a quick introduction from some of our audience, so we also get to know about
Very
them.
good idea. Absolutely.
Yeah. How about Govind? Why don't you tell us something about yourself?
Yeah, sure.
What makes you interested in watercolor?
Excellent. Prerna, first of all, thank you very much and for coordinating and moderating the session, and you did it wonderfully well. And next, Maarten was excellent and outstanding, explaining about the different systems of the brushes and the paints and the paintings. I was so much thrilled to see your natural colors and stuff like this. Okay, coming to my point of view, I am an engineer by profession, and then I finished my master's in environment engineering from Australia, and I worked for about 25 years in abroad in Muscat, Dubai, and I worked for an American. Right now I'm working as an engineering director for a top-notch American firm, and I'm based out in Gurgaon, Delhi, and not very far from Rishikesh, as what you said, and not very far. And but my hometown is Bangalore, and so in Bangalore you don't have very many people. Even if you go to the villages to draw a painting, they will not come and snap your paints and brushes and stuff like this. Very people, yeah. My hometown, my basically from Bangalore. So now due to this COVID pandemic, we are all working from home right now from Bangalore. And once the work resumes from the offices, then I'll fly back to Delhi. That's it from my side. And the last but not the least is I have this what you can say curiosity for innovativeness, innovation, creativity, and I do a lot of that in my work. Whether suppose there's a work on to give a report, instead of a report, I give a report and then I focus on the graphs and trend analysis and showing the trends and more of creative thinking. I think I'm going in that line. So when I see the paintings, I get thrilled and I get enthusiastic, and that's the reason why I signed up for Prerna's art circle. So I wish I can learn something and do something which I can, from my humble, I can do something creative. That's all. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Govind. And Govind, do you also paint at all? Have you tried painting yourself, or are you?
Sorry? I'm a painter myself. No. My wife is a very good painter. You can see the metal emboss wall.
Yeah.
She's a classic painter. She's done marble painting and metal emboss and 3D decoupage and all that.
Sure.
So it's kind of a competition. Now I want to learn and then show it.
Cool. Okay. All right.
It's good for your marriage.
That's great, Prerna. Yeah.
Great. All right. So moving on to some more people. A quick time check. Also, we still have like 40. We have time. Yeah, we have almost an hour more to go for the session. But just I would like to hear from more people. Like Shreyas, are you there? Do you want to tell your interest in art and what makes you interested in joining the session today? Shreyas. Okay, Shreyas seems to be not here. How about, I can see Suresh Nair. Suresh, do you want to speak about your interest?
Certainly. Good morning, good afternoon, or whatever time, Martin, you are at.
Morning.
Good morning.
Very early.
I'm very excited to be in this session. Prerna, I was there in the mandala art that you have arranged last time, and I started my childhood as an artist, right? I mean, artist means don't think like the brushes and papers that Martin you were talking about. Whatever I can collect in my strength, small palette of watercolor. Basically, I started with watercolors. And I do very, very basic paintings. I feel there is a child part of me which is very connected to the art, but sort of lost growing to an adult, right? And so nowadays I feel more connected to it. And obviously, when I see a soul connecting paint, actually I feel my heart skipping a beat, right? I always love the art form of it. And when I look at it nowadays, I feel, now that you apply myself too much into it, I feel that watercolor is a bit complex, right? The way, you need to know the wetness of the paint and the layers, how they interact with each other. So it feels very alienated right now. So I wanted to connect back to, how I used to, I mean, as I mentioned, my childhood, all I had is, I think a 12 color, small, round watercolors, and then, some normal paper, by the time I finish the painting, the paper will be so wet and,
Yeah,
wobbly.
yeah,
So,
I know that kind of phenomena. Yeah.
right. So I wanted to explore more on that one. So I want to get the basics and confidence so that I probably might be able to equip better tools now to get to it. But it's I'm very excited, to so far whatever you shared feels so nice. And recently seen a video about one of this. I don't know the brand of it. One of this expensive brush, how they make it, hand make it, right? And very microscopically they just
Yeah.
looked at it to make sure that, as you exactly said, the tip always forms to the end of it, and it is pretty damn expensive when I looked at it. So it's a lot to that side of the world. I surely wanted to step in, but this is a very good start for me to get connected back to it.
Okay.
Thank you for inviting me, Pratna.
Great. Great. Thanks,
Thank you.
Suresh. Sandeep Doshi, do you like to speak? I think we saw you open your video for a bit and then you disappeared. Okay. Yes, Sandeep.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Martin.
Hi, Sandeep.
Your introduction and the detailing was very, very engaging, and I was with you in whatever you shared. I could see that, you're painting. So amazing painting. I'm really inspired by what you're doing. And thank you, Prerna, for creating this opportunity for all of us. Of my introduction, I'm just a very beginner and I love painting, but I really want to learn also. So this is a good opportunity to, experience here on online way of looking at how you do watercolor painting. My background, I'm a civil engineer and I'm an entrepreneur. I run my business in Mumbai, and this is my hobby. I give time for myself and learn new things every time. So this time I'm thinking of learning painting.
Very good.
Yeah, this is
That's awesome.
why I'm here
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, I get in the academy, if I may interrupt. The private academy where I teach, there are a lot of people who had professions before, and they always had this artistic idea that they wanted to do something in art, and then later in life they have more free time, or they skipped their job or whatever. By Corona, they had no job anymore, and then they started to and go for the arts. So. For me, I started when I was about five years old, and it was for me actually quite normal to follow the whole trail towards what I am now at the moment. So I was always drawing and painting. It was very clear that I had to go to the academy to learn the techniques to express my feelings, to express my ideas about art. But it doesn't matter what age you start. I mean, sometimes you learn faster when you are a bit older, although there are also barriers coming that you think, oh, can I do it? Can I do it? And watercolor, it's so difficult. Can I make it? I always say with watercolor, there's kind of idea that it is one of the most difficult techniques. Well, it is. But it's not so difficult as you think. If you start to look to certain watercolors and you want to do it in the same manner, then it becomes complicated. But you only have to think all the time, what I do is I use color with water. And I'm just filling the parts with the color I need. And in that way, you are more spontaneous, because that's what you need to be for watercolor, to be spontaneous in the reactions when you're going to paint something from real life. If you do something abstract or you do something out of fantasy, you are your own boss, of course, and you can do what you want. But if you go for a realistic art, which means you have a subject in front of you, a model or apples or whatever, or landscape, then it becomes, of course, more complicated because you have to transform your paint into a shape. And it is your own idea about how difficult, how complicated you want to make it. So that's why we also, when I do later the demonstration, I just do very simple, an apple, which is just a round object. And we can say something about the color and light and shade, and I will show you a little bit how you use your brush. So I always advise my students, when they start with a new technique, take the simplest of objects and try it out in that way, how the techniques runs while you are painting.
Thank you for that input. Also, my son is in Amsterdam, studying in University of Amsterdam.
Oh, how nice. Yes.
I got connected. I never knew that you are from Amsterdam till the morning. But
Yeah.
connecting with you. And he loves arts. He has learned formally the art and design in his school and taken a subject
Okay.
10th grade. So
maybe we'll connect you personally. I mean, I'll share the Instagram link so we can follow him and then connect with Maarten.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay, I want to go through some more people. Resham. Resham, do you want to introduce yourself? And also maybe
hello. So
Hi.
I'm a freelance photographer and I love to paint. Like everyone pushes me forward to just like maybe start my own line or something. And if the pandemic wasn't like the way it's been going on, I might have. But yeah, I love drawing anatomy and I love showcasing it in a way that it's body positive. So that's one of the reasons I'm here. I really want to learn like how to shade. Maybe like yeah, I mean I'm a work in progress with it. But yeah, just trying to go through it with you guys. And I think the work is so awesome. It really inspires me to see other artists and their work. Yeah, and learn with that.
Great.
Yes, thank you. It is always a kind of competition between photographers and painters,
Yeah,
and that's
that is so true.
especially nowadays. That you can say in the history of art that photography took over from the painters. That was in the end of the 19th century, and that the painters thought, what can we do if a photographer can make a picture of a portrait, for instance, in a millisecond, and the painter has to work a half a day to get the same kind of and some months on the portrait if you do it precisely.
Yes, so true, so true.
Yeah, and that
Yeah,
is
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. I think it's like playing with light mostly with photography. Like even with like just photographing, even like a pet or something, it takes like yeah, afternoons are better. Some days, if it's quite cloudy, it's not supposed to be the best environment for us to click. But yeah, I mean, it's all about visually portraying like the story that you have in your mind, whatever you vision inside your head. And yeah, but painting is way more calming to me, I guess. It really helps just calm your mind and put yourself in a more expressive mood.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, as what you say is true, that painting and photography, which binds it, is that you work with light. That's it.
Yes,
You can make an elaborate, realistic painting or a precise photo of a situation, but it all depends on the right lighting. If that's not there, then it blurs away, or if it hasn't got any relief. So light is for both. It's a very important thing.
exactly. For me, like before shoots, I have to schedule like my whole day, like when if it's going to be cloudy and I can't do the shoot. I mean, it depends on how it's going to be accordingly. It's all
Yes.
supposed schedule beforehand so we don't end up wasting our time because it is all online.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes when it's clouded, it can also, for a painter, but also for a photographer, it can give you
Yeah,
very dramatic scenes. I will show you one I made this summer. That was one of these days that it could start raining while I was working, so I had to go very fast. And this is a famous place in Czech Republic.
oh my
And as you
God,
can
this is so
see,
gorgeous.
it's near a village where the train passed by, and there you see these two ruins on top. It's on a volcanic rock.
Oh my
But
God.
as you can see, there was a lot of dark clouds coming. So I had to paint very fast. And here you also see I used this big brush and just let it go, let it do its work. You see the structure of the clouds, and by just dabbing it, it makes it slightly darker and lighter. You get this dramatic scene of a very dark rock at the background
That is
and
so true.
heavy
That is so
clouds on
true.
top.
And for me, getting the clouds right mostly gets a bit too much. Like I'm not great with it. But yeah, I've painted a few things, and yeah, I'm just getting better. But getting the shade right is a bit hard.
Mhm.
That's almost like even with like painting anatomy with water. Like if there are some parts that doesn't have a lot of light, so it's good to play with. But yeah, I mostly like drawing anatomy, anything with hands, the body, maybe
Yeah.
show a person's anatomy in a different light because people are just so closed up about maybe their bodies and the way they perceive themselves. So yeah, maybe in the future, I just want to start something with a more body positive outlook, maybe for men and women.
Yes, I
Um,
understand.
Great. Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Isham, yeah.
Thank you so much, guys.
I'd like to, we like to move on. We have got about, we have to keep a time check also. I would quickly ask for one more person to introduce, maybe anyone who wants to introduce, you can just speak up and it'll be great. I see there's somebody with the numbers, Miss, if you like to speak, like 988, I don't know what's your name, but you've joined with the number if you want to speak. Hi.
I can see her clearly, but yeah, some people don't have many questions. Just want to
that's
see
fine.
how
And
it goes.
it's absolutely fine if someone doesn't want to.
Yeah.
There is one more person, Ananya Nayak. Do you want to speak up and tell something? What are you looking for in this session? Ananya Nayak? Okay, she's not there, it seems. It's all right. So let us continue now with the demonstration, Maarten. And maybe towards the end, take more questions and have some more conversation.
Good. Absolutely. Thank you, Berna. Yeah. Well, we are all looking for the technique, of course. So, and to see what is happening, you have to be quiet and concentrated. So that is why some people just are quiet and just want to see how it goes. So I will, because I have no extra camera, so I will put my laptop slowly down so that you can see from the top what I'm doing. I'm turning it around after every part I do, so to show you and explain what I did. So I will turn now down the screen, and then you can see a part of the apple. We'll put it slightly more towards me so that you can see that better. You can see my hands. Yeah. I will put it, I have to see to get it right. Go a little bit to the back. Okay, what I said is that I always start with a drawing. So I put the apple, one cutted apple, one whole apple, such a way that I can see them clearly, and there is light coming from the left side, so I can see a little bit of shade on the sides, which is important because if you want to suggest shape, so what the form of things, you need light, but you also need shade. So that's why it's important that you put your still life in such a way that there is one strong light part and one strong shade part. Now, and then I start to draw very lightly, because you can rub or erase it slightly with your with an eraser, but you have to be careful that your paper will not be too much rubbed, because then the water will not get very nicely absorbs into your paper. So it's better just to draw lightly. It's more that you do some outlines and you make the composition. So as you can see, I will turn it.
I have a question.
Yeah, just please.
What paper are you using for this?
Well, oh yeah, this is different paper. This is bamboo paper.
Okay.
This summer I worked a lot on bamboo paper. I told you that I like to challenge myself with different kind of papers to see what I get. Every paper gets another expression. So I use this time bamboo paper. And well, it's all right, but I have mixed feelings. I love my mulberry paper, but yeah, it's difficult to get. I don't know where. So perhaps you guys know some small paper factory who make mulberry paper. Let me know, because I'm very interested in that. Okay, I continue with my apple, the cutted one. Because 1 apple a day keeps the doctor away, but 2, that's much better. So it's kind of heart shape, and then you have the clock house in the middle and the stem on top. So, and also that has a shade. As you can see, I scratch a little bit on my pad. I will show you. For that I have to put the screen up again. I told you it's today mechanical. Can you see the outlines?
Yes.
Yeah, you can see that clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, you see, so this is the composition, and it's very lightly drawn. I don't go into shading, no hatching, because that is not what you want when you do a watercolor. You only need a small, quick sketch. But you also can see that although you think an apple is round, you should not draw it round, because then it becomes a mango. You should always look to the edges of the shape. And the apple has also edges, very soft, but they are there, and then it becomes more expressive. You see? Before you know, you have a balloon or a ping pong ball or whatever, and that's not an apple. So expression of the subject is a very important thing. Okay, I will put the screen down again so that you can see my apple and my working. This one I will show you quickly what I do when I do the shade. If I'm in a landscape, as I told you, then I want to have quickly done the shade. Okay. So I start with a kind of blue color on my brush. I will put it here. Because what you can say is the sunlight is warm, as you know, in India especially, and the shade is cool. So I take a bit grayish, bluish color for that, and I have to find the right tonal value. Not too strong, but also not too light, because it's the first layer. You should be a little bit be careful. Otherwise, before you know, you are too strong and the color will not come out. So you use a different piece of paper to try out your color, or you have a big pad and then you can, on the corner, on the side, you can try out your color. As you can see what I did here, some depths. Okay, then I have to look carefully. I look always through my eyelashes. That's an important thing, because you are, when you look with both eyes wide open, you see all the details. And you get confused. You see the clock house, you see the stem, you see the colors, you see everything, and you don't know where to start. So what I always advise is close your eyes almost and look through the eyelashes towards your shape. And then you see a strong difference between light and shade. Another thing I forgot to tell you is that you always need to have a pair of tissues with you, because I will show you what you can do with it later. It is to, if you go too strong or you want an edge less sharp, you can dab your paper, your tissue, and then it sucks the color a little bit, and in that way you have it more blurred. So that is a technique you can use. It's like the eraser with drawing. You have the tissue with watercolor. Okay. So I go over it. I look carefully to the shade part. I try to spare out a little bit. It's nice and wet, because inside that's an advantage. It doesn't dry so quickly, because if you are outside and the sun shines, that is always difficult because it dries very quickly. Okay, now I shall show you what I do with, I have here done some edge-like movement, and I want a little bit less sharp, so I dab a little bit with my tissue around it. You can make also kind of knot and do it like that. And in that way, I'll show you. You can see it's getting in a bit of a shade part. I do it very quickly, and then at the side I dabbed with my tissue, and you see the edges becomes a little bit less sharp. And that's an important thing. Watch out for dripping, because we are not all Jackson Pollock, so we have no dripping. We don't want dripping in our painting. You can see me, okay. That's one part I use. A little bit more here. Dab it a little bit, and then I go to the other one. Because if you have a composition, you always have to work together. So don't think, oh, first I will finish one thing and then I will slowly begin at the other one. Always try to see it as one whole thing, and you work on all things together. You see, I use now the tip of my brush, and if I want, then I want a bigger part, then I take the belly of the brush, you see? So I take the tip of the brush where it's getting into a tight shape, and then I can push it a little bit and then go again back to the point of the shape. I will show you later. Well, the casting shades always connect them. That's an important thing. The casting shades belong to the shape. Yeah. If you do that separately, it will always show separately with watercolor. So you always have to connect these things together. Look through the eyelashes. And the light comes from the left side, so most of the time on the right side are the shades. Never use line too much, because a line is not existing in painting. Eh? A line is what you use when you make a drawing, but if you are painting, then you should avoid strong lines, because that will not in the end come to a space-like situation. You see only strong lines, and then it becomes flat. So, and then Klokhuis, I do a little bit. Shouldn't be all so precisely, a little bit suggestion of it. Then I see that the side of this apple is not quite well. It's still a bit wet, so I go over it, as you can see. And then it blurs a little bit, and then I can let it dry. So, now I put it lightly now on the paper, and I can still continue a little bit with the same paint to get the shape right. Of course, you need patience when you do watercolor. I told you when you are outside and the sun is burning, then it goes very quickly, so then you can continue. But if it's a more atmospheric, more damp, then it takes some time before it completely dries. And you have to let it dry, because if you are impatient and you continue, then you get all kind of strange shapes which you can't use for a realistic painter. If you're an abstract painter or an abstract expressionist painter, well, then it doesn't really matter. You can drip what you like, you can put dabs of watercolor everywhere, because it doesn't have to look like. But if it has to look like, then you have to be careful that you put layer on layer after it dries, and that can take some time. So that is what you have to take care of. Well, in the meantime, I will show you, because if I put it right up, it can drip a little bit. So I will show you now what I did till now. Can you see? So I bound the two parts together in the composition. You see, it's dripping down and it becomes a belly underneath. So we don't want that. So I take it back again. And I dry my brush a little bit on my tissue, and then I put it underneath to suck up the too much of watercolor, so that it will nicely dry together. You can blow a little bit. You can also use a föhn for your hair to put on it, so that it will go quicker. In the meantime, you can clean your brush, and as you can see, the apple has two colors. It's a yellowish part, yellowish greenish part, and a reddish part. Well, green and red, if you bring that together, that's quite risky, because before you know, it gets a kind of bronze color, a bit brownish, and you don't want it, because you want a fresh apple which looks juicy, and not only that you want to eat it, but also that you enjoy the painting because it has this juicy color. Fresh fruit, that's one of the beautiful things in nature, fresh fruit. So you have to analyze the color a little bit. You say, okay, which is the lightest color, the red or the yellow? The yellow, of course. You see, I can turn it around a little bit. You see, that is a light part. So it's not wrong to start with the lightest color. And you know, yellow and red, that doesn't bite each other. If it was more green with red, then you have to be careful, because then you get this thing, what I told you, that it becomes brownish, and then you have not a fresh apple. So I start to mix the light yellowish color. Take some time, because you have to find the right color by looking at it. Slightly, you can put in some green, but not too much, so that it becomes a little bit, not too much lemon yellow, because that is not what it is, but slightly. You try it out here. So I will show you my pad. Yeah, you see that I put the yellow there on the second part. And always do a little bit more, because if you have to mix all the time, in the meanwhile, your watercolor is drying. And if some parts are more dry than the other, you get these strange star-like situations, which you don't want always. So I have now a nice color, which looks like my apple. Slightly more water. The tone and the color is very important, that you find the right, and don't start too dark, but always start a bit light. You can always make it darker, but it's more difficult to make it light. What was my situation? Yeah, like this. And I can actually, it is not yet completely dry. So you blow a little bit, but I can already start with the side of the apple. To bring it in on the parts which need to be yellowish. And the important thing is there is a light point on your apple and you want to show that. So you put it and then you take your tissue and you just put it on top. I will show you what you get. You see this, I took that off with my tissue. You can also paint around it, but then you get sharp edges and that is not always if you want a round object. Can you see it properly? Then it is better if you do that with the tissue. Well, it's almost the same color, slightly lighter when you cut open the apple, but we do that later. First, I will just continue a little bit with my yellow, also on the shady parts. A bit of play doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be exactly within the lines. I mean, it's not a kind of filling in thing. You have to dare to use it a little bit. It will dry a little bit like itself. So now I have to let it dry, otherwise it will drip.
Excuse me, Maarten, can you focus on the paper? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have now better. Huh? Yeah. So I have to let it dry, and I will go now for the other part. That's also the same kind of yellow. So I mix a bit of warm yellow with a cool yellow. I do a little bit of green. I add to it. That is the feeling you have to develop. What are your colors? How does it look like? And that is, of course, doing a lot, experience, just to know what kind of color you want to get. And sometimes it takes some time to do right. You try it out on the side of your paper to know, and then you continue with the other half. You can go on also over the shade because the yellow is everywhere. It becomes a little bit greenish, but it doesn't matter because it's very light. Yep. This. And then the top of the open apple, which I cut it, is more, difficult to explain in words what it is, but I use a little bit of yellow and yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is more the earth color, as you probably know. It's very light, it's almost white, but not yet completely. And I will bring the paint just quickly over that part. I do it very, very light, you see? So in that way, you don't have to be afraid that your shape will be incorrect in the end. So you let your brush do the thing. Huh? So you hold your brush, you have the thick part of your brush and the thin part. It's better to hold it like this. So not like this, as if you are writing a letter. No, take some distance by holding it like that between your middle finger, your index finger and your thumb, very lightly, so that you can also splash around a little bit if it's necessary, especially if you want to make leaves. Good. I will show you what I did. I will put the screen up step by step, as I told you. You can see it, huh? So very lightly, I put it all together. And now it has to dry. So that is an important thing, that it will not be too wet. So it takes some time. I don't have a phone with me here because I never use phone. I take the time just to let it dry by itself. It's the sucking of the paper which is important. I will turn down the screen again. I let it dry and I take another piece of sheet, and this was bamboo paper, and that's more smooth, and then I go to mulberry paper. And the nice thing of mulberry paper, you see the edges. It is really handmade paper. And it's very rough, as I showed you with my works. Okay, I take my pencil again, and I will draw my apple. So, an artist is always quiet, as you understand. It's for you that I start talking so much, but when I'm really working in the field, I listen to the birds, I listen to the sound of the wind in the trees, and that's why I do it. It's a kind of Zen experience, I always say to my students. And that is the most lovely moment when you are painting, to be aware of the nature around you, and that can also be in your studio. Okay, now I do something different, and I will show you another way of doing it directly. This other one is in layers, part with the shade and then the color. And now I will show you if you do it directly wet and wet. And for that I need stronger colors and quite some water, because mulberry paper is that is quite sucking, it's absorbing a lot. So before you know it is in. So that's one. And it's good to prepare your paint in advance, that you have your colors ready, so that you can immediately react in this technique. And then I take the red. Because we have a yellow reddish apple. It's an L-star apple. Don't know if you know that. That's one of the most popular apples in Holland. Try out the color. It can be a little bit more stronger. More pigment. Okay, I take two brushes. One for the red, one from the yellow, because I have to react immediately. And I take the paper, I put it in my mouth. And then I start to dip in. And I go very quickly, very watery over the shape of my apple. Because it should be still wet. That is the whole thing. Then I take my red and I let it flow into my paint. Because it's wet, it will go a little bit its own way. Let it be. Paint is individual also. Likes to do his own way. It should not be always, because you always have to control what you are doing, but in this way you can play with it. Use your brush lightly. I can't show you yet the whole thing because it's so wet it will immediately drip, so you have to have patience to see what I did. And in that way you can say, well, it is nice, but it is not yet strong enough. So I will put a little bit more crimson color to it, add a little bit, because it's more crimson reddish. Huh? So you can immediately also play with color difference. let it flow. It is very rough paper, so you get also kind of structure in your paint. Use your paper to make a highlight, suck it out, make it slightly lighter. Okay, I let it dry and then I can show you, and then I go to the next one. I start again with the yellow color. Well, that is the inner part, as I told you. So that's very light, slightly darker than white, more yellowish. Make it wet. So, and then I can bring in a little bit of brownish color. With these blocks of paint, you always have to wet it. It takes some time till the pigment gets off. And that's always a bit difficult. And I will do the stem. I will also do the other stem here. Put it in so that it can flow a little bit. You don't have to do it precisely. It's just that it will a little bit suggest the shape. Then we go to the other skin of the under part of the apple, which is more yellowish. I take a new part of the palette because it's getting more dirty. More water. You see, you have to do it, of course, concentrated, but you also have to keep on painting, so don't wait too long. And then you can put in the yellow part, as I did with the other apple, just underneath to work at the whole thing at the same moment. And then you have to let it dry. Then I can use a little bit of that red. Let it flow into the yellow, and at the side you see a very thin part of the skin. You can also use a dry brush, just if you did too much, to take it away. And also you can also remove a little bit with clean water so that it will not go too far into the other color. So, and then I'm going to make a little bit of shade underneath, and that is more, always shade color is always difficult to see. You know, it is a reflection of the color of the object in it. Mostly it is more coolish, so I should say it's more purplish. So I go for purple with a little bit of red. Although you follow the colors as you see them in real, it's always nicer to make it more elaborate. I mean, you are a painter. And that's the difference with a photographer. He can't do that, she can't do that, because that's all in the film. But you can change the color as you like. If you think, well, a little bit of that color can makes it more beautiful. And then I put in, because it's getting dry now a little bit, I put in the shade underneath the apple, which is, will show you later, more purplish. And you can use the same color also in the shade of the apple, because that's also purplish. So can combine these things a little bit more. Sometimes you see I use the tip of my brush, and sometimes I use the belly. Important that you always do that thing. Because of the paper, it's of course still very blurred, but I will show you. And it spreads out a little bit, so it's more what I say a Japanese style. It's not precise, but more blurred. Can you see? It's typical. The paper are these structural blotches you can see, and I did it immediately. I didn't start with the shade, but I immediately did the color, and it is, you can say, the middle part of the whole session, because then you have to wait till it's dry, because then you want to bring in more details, things like a better stem which sticks out of the apple. You can use a little bit different colors to get it in the right shade. You see this purple underneath?
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
And that I also used the purple a little bit in the shade of the apple, you see? And I was careful not to touch that in the yellow, because before you know it, it gets all red, and that's not what you want, because it's an L-star apple. Okay, now I let this dry a little bit, and then I will continue with the other technique. I call this one the wet technique, what I just did, the wet technique. And now I'm going to do the dry technique, because that means that you are waiting till it's dry before you put another color on top. And I will put it down again so that you can see what I do. I will clean my brushes because it's another painting. In normal life, I never do that, of course. I'm not some kind of Bob Ross. He is very easygoing, this guy. He can do everything at the same time, but I have to concentrate on one thing at the same time. Well, I use the same colors, of course. The apple is the apple. And what I'm going to do now is to put a red layer on top of the apples, because I had the yellow, it's still light, I have the shade, but now I will bring in the red. And that is more precise work. If you do the dry technique, yeah, then you get a more realistic kind of painting. With the wet technique, it's more an impressionistic way of painting. It depends what you like, the one or the other. I mean, that is what is your artistic idea, what you love to see. I try to go a little bit, you see that the apple is not just one red thing, but it has this, it goes with the shape of the apple. So I do that also with the tip of my brush, and then I use sometimes the full belly to give also this idea of, yeah, the flame, we call that, the flame of the color. You know what a flame is, that's. And I spare out the other apple because I want to keep that in the right color. There's no red on top, so I will not go there. And I spare out the light part a little bit. So it's just the first layer that has to dry also. I go now to the other part. Of course, you understand I do it the short way. I mean, we have to do that in now, what is the time? It's only that I show you how you use your brush, how you move your brush, and two different techniques which you like to do.
In fact, Maarten, it is it's almost time. It is time. It's 1:30, which is like 1.5 hours. But I can see everyone is there and quite interested in you and seeing the work finish.
Yeah.
I would just say, can take a few questions if someone has now.
I will show this what I did just now. Just have a quick look. You see, it is really a layer on top, and watercolor paint is always drying up lighter, so you have to be aware of that. And then I used my tissue again just to make the edges slightly blurred. Not always, because sometimes it's nice to have this strong shape like brush stroke, but that's what I do now. And to finish the story just by talking, in the end, you continue in this manner. So you have also the wet technique. Now, when it's dry again, you can continue, you can make it very wet and you start to let it flow together and to come out of like a flower, that it will become the shape. Or you have the dry technique and you put, after drying, layer upon layer. And then you see that watercolor is a glazing technique. Glazing is that you have transparent layers of color on top of each other, and that gives depth to your color, and that is the beauty of watercolor.
And can we not achieve that with the oil paints? This kind of flare, we do that.
Sorry, what do you say?
So I'm asking you, like how you explain the glazing technique with watercolor.
Yeah.
We not achieve that, or do we also achieve that in oil paints?
Yes, you can, absolutely. I do always do that. That for watercolor, you don't call it so much glazing technique. That you call more in oil colors, because what you do when you build up a painting, let's say you use white. You mix your colors and you put white, titanium white or zinc white, you add to the color, and in that way you can make light and shade. Just the more whitish, the more light, the less whitish, the more dark. They let it dry, that's very important, because oil paint takes about a week that it is dry, and then you can glaze it over with pure paint without white. And you have to thin your oil paint in such a way that it becomes transparent. So you need a little bit more medium to do that. And that you can mix a certain like resin with oil and turpentine, and then you get a special glazing medium. So you can use that more, you can use it a bit like water actually. Yeah, and then you can, with a soft brush, you can go over your first painting, which we call an underpainting, to give the painting a deep color. And also that you have to do several times to get the real saturated color you want. Let's say of this apple, you want this beautiful purplish reddish color. It's not in one layer, you should think. With watercolor, I do first yellow, then a bit red, and after that I do more this crimson color, and then I add also purple on top. So you can do the same thing with oil, only every layer you have to wait for a long time. And that is the difference.
Okay, great. And what size of the brush that you are using for this session, for this painting that you just did?
For the watercolor, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What size and which brush were you using? What type of brush were you using?
Now I used, now you can see the size. The numbers are gone because I used them so much that everything on the wood is gone. But I tell you a bit between number 8 and 12 I use. Not too big, not too small. Sometimes I have this very small brush if I really have to go into details, and that's a quite new brush, and that's number 01. Yeah, that is really when you do eyelashes, for instance, or you do a very thin twig you want to put in your tree, or slightly small leaves. Then it's better to use to build it up with a small brush. So you can start to do the big patches with a big brush, and then when it's dry, you can go over it with a small brush to make it more detailed.
Okay, and which one is this? Is this a synthetic brush or?
Yeah, these are all sables.
Okay.
These are also, you can see that because it is dark brown, and these, take it out. Here you have a thick nylon one, artificial, and that's more reddish brown. Can you see the difference?
Yes.
Yeah. It's very good. I used it quite often, but as I told you, I use as well ink, washed ink, which is almost like watercolor. And then I use actually only because ink has a binder, which if it gets into your hair, it can it can stick to it. You can't clean it, and that's of course a pity. If you have the very expensive sable hairs, you should never use ink with that. But with ink, you can use as best your artificial hair. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. What else? Do we have more questions today?
Yes, hi Martin, Urvashi here.
Ah, yeah. Hi,
Yeah,
Priyanka.
hi. Yeah,
No,
Urvashi,
Urvashi.
Yes.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Hi,
Sorry.
Urvashi here. Hi, Prerna.
Oh, yeah, your voice was similar to somebody I know.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so when you said that you have to look between your eyelashes,
Yeah.
can you please explain it a little? I mean, what does it mean? I loved what you did.
Yes. Well, I show you what I'm doing. It is
Yes.
just when you wake and you don't want to see the light. That is the same movement of your eyes. This is when you have to look very well to the details, but you start with almost closing your eyes because everything gets blurred and it gets more simple. That's what I say. If you want to see the right shades against the right light with an apple, which is multicolored, you see, and shiny, you get confused with all the details. But if you look through the eyelashes to your apple, you see that you see a clear reddish part, a clear yellow part, you see a clear darker side, which is the shade, and you see a clear light side.
Yes.
So for a painter, take distance is very important. Also when you do watercolor, if you stand up, you look what you do and then you sit down again, because most of the time you sit with watercolor. With an oil painting, you put it on the easel, but you could see that it was dripping. So you have to keep it flat or a little bit in an angle, but not too much. And then you have to take distance to see the difference between what you are painting, the subject, and the painting. And then you know, okay, oh, I have to bring in a little bit more this or that. You understand?
Yes. I guess I do.
Good, super.
I'll try.
Yeah, so it is, you start with through the eyelashes and then slowly you open your eyes because you want to give in more details.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have one question, Martin.
Yes, go in there.
The way you taught us was excellent.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah, just a little bit the distinction between the wet technique and the dry technique. In the wet technique, I think in both the techniques you made the outline perfect. Second was you put the colors, but in the dry technique it was left to dry. Okay.
Yeah.
Wet technique, you started off with which color first? It was the red,
Grayish, bluish.
reddish bluish. Yes.
Yeah, that's what. But that you can buy it in a tube. It's Payne's gray. That's typical. It's an Englishman who developed this color. But you know, the English were the great water painters in the 18th century, and they developed their technique enormously. And Payne's is one of these guys in the 19th century who got to a mixture that is a certain cool gray which I can use for my shades.
So that is reddish bluish first.
Those are reddish bluish. That is really blackish bluish.
Okay.
And that's why it's called Payne's gray. The Payne's is Mr. Payne's or Sir Payne's, I don't know. And then you have the gray means cool gray, blue. You can mix it yourself by using a little bit of ivory black together with ultramarine blue.
Yeah. So you do that first. And then
usually you don't use black in watercolor.
Yeah.
Because sorry?
Go ahead. You please go ahead, and then I'll ask you a question.
Yeah. Black is, you have different kind of pigments. You have the pigments which are very tiny grains, and they are very opaque. For instance, ivory black is a very opaque paint. And for the glazing technique with watercolors, you use the most transparent colors. It means the grains which are slightly bigger if you look through a microscope. Yeah, because then you get this transparentness. Certain colors you should avoid in your color palette because before you know, it becomes a gouache. You know, gouache, it's the same technique, but it's only done by these French people.
Yeah.
And the French, they loved gouache, as the name says, and that is more opaque with white. And the British were more, it rains all the time in Britain, as you know. So they like more water, so they don't use white, but the white of the paper.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. And then when you finished with the red in the wet technique, and then you started off with the yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That yellow, you have two different shades, isn't it? One you have one shade is different for the big apple, and for the half apple, it's another shade, totally, completely different, isn't it?
Yeah.
You mix it separately. You mix the yellow shade separately, or is it from the same palette, same place?
Yeah, I used the same kind of yellow. I used the same, only I added some yellow ochre, which is, as you know, a more brownish yellow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it gets more, the fruit, the flesh, you can say, the meat of the apple. It's another color than the skin of the apple.
Oh, great.
You understand?
Got it.
So just to clarify, Maarten, so for the inner part of the apple, you're also using yellow ochre, but for the outline, the skin, you're using which yellow are you using for that?
I'm using a lemon yellow with a bit of that's more cadmium yellow, although it is no cadmium, but for people understand cadmium yellow, it is going a little bit to saffron yellow. It's more, now you know about the beautiful saris of saffron yellow in your country.
Yeah.
That's more the warmish yellow. And the lemon yellow is a cool yellow. So I mix these two to get a slight, because it's tending to become greenish. Because when the apple is still not ripe, it is green, as you know. And then by the sun, it gets the color. So it becomes, the green gets more yellow, and then it gets his blush, actually. It's the blush of the apple, which is, as human beings, when they blush, you get also crimson cheeks.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, and then what you prefer, the wet technique of the dry technique. I mean, that also has to do with your temperament. I always say style, this is the way you paint, is actually you are born with it. So if you are an impatient and expressive person, you will tend to use the wet technique because you want immediately result. And you want to be expressive in your brushstroke. While you are Vata, for instance, while I'm a Vata, from Ayurvedic distinctions, Vata, Kapha, Pitta. Well, if you're Pitta, you do the wet technique. When you're Kapha, you do the dry technique. And when you Vata, and when you're Kapha, then you don't do anything. But that has to do with your temperament. So when I have a group of students in front of me, I see immediately what kind of person it is. I give them one technique in drawing or painting, and you get as much different paintings as students you have, because everybody has another expression, temperature. These things all play in the style of your painting. So you have to try it out, and which technique you like the best, you get the best result, you feel yourself the strongest. For that, you have to choose.
Great. Okay, I think we're almost towards we're done with the session very much. If you guys have liked the session or any comments, do drop it in the chat. Well, Maarten and I would like to hear that.
Absolutely. And perhaps when we start the real lesson online, then I go, of course, much more detailed in what you have to do. I will give you a task to do, special subjects, special paint, and what kind of materials, and then you can do it yourself. Because that is in the end what you want. It's nice to look to a painter how he does it, but then it comes to do it yourself and try out and find and take the challenge to get a good picture.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Martin. Firstly, I have to tell you that it's 8:30. It was 8:30 a.m. for Martin to start, and cycle 45 minutes to get to a studio. So he had to start like 7 in the morning on Saturday. So it was some work for him.
yeah, I mistook the
Yeah,
time.
for
I
our
thought it was
session.
later,
So,
and that is the time difference is always a thing. But everything went all right. It's only I'm apologize for the Zoom on my telephone. That
no,
I
you don't
couldn't
have to actually. It worked pretty well with the laptop also. So it's really
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy that things went all right. It was nice meeting you people and to show you the skill of water painting. And if you like, we can continue later with more different kind of subjects.
Thank you, Martin. And it was
Thank
very
you so much.
exciting
Thank you
watching
so
you
much.
drawing like this.
Yes. Okay.
yeah.
I agree.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye everyone. Thank you so
Bye,
much
guys.
for
Thank you so much.
joining in.
Bye bye.
Bye.